Last week on Taste Buds, we looked at why Chinese food is popular in India. There's two reasons. First, the liberalization of India's economy led to more people dining out in the 90s. And second, certain characteristics of Chinese cuisine was attractive to the Indian palate. Its use of umami flavors, its starch, and its carbs. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. Just make sure you watch the video before from last week before you watch this one. The link is below. But India's and China's Chinese food have really little in common aside from the use of soy sauce and carbs. So who has altered Chinese food in India? Let's take a look this week. But first, get your munchies on because you're watching Taste Buds. So once upon a time, 400 years ago, Hakka people came to Kolkata. They mostly came from Meizhou in southern China, and they served chop sueys and sweet and sour chicken, you know, the type of food that you would associate with Chinese American food. But we'll come back to the Hakka people later. Momos are meat or veggie fillings wrapped in a flour skin, and they're often associated with Chinese food. My taste bud, Savika, took me to try a popular momo spot.
When do you think people actually label momos as Chinese here in Delhi?
So when momos were introduced into the Indian culture and people really were starting to develop the culture of eating momos, they did think that that was Chinese food. But I think it's not just everything being clubbed into the label of Chinese. It's just like certain characteristics of it, like if something is
a bun, like with a dumpling.
A dumpling which has a filling that is unconventional to the vegetables that are used in India.
In the 1970s, chefs who started their career in Hong Kong and have been cooking Sichuan food there arrived in major cities like Bombay and Delhi, and they started cooking Sichuan food for their guests. It's actually kind of mind-blowing to think about this because back in those days, Hong Kong people themselves were getting used to the flavors of Sichuan food. Remember Veer Sangvi? He's the food expert that we introduced last week.
And Indians had never been used to the idea that Chinese food could be hot. Now, they didn't necessarily have the ingredients for Sichuan food. The Sichuan pepper, for instance, was unknown in India. So they put lots and lots of chilies in it.
Around the same time, remember the Hakkas I mentioned earlier who came to Kolkata before the other chefs?
Many of them, you have to remember, had never been further east than Calcutta. They had no idea what Sichuan was, let alone that it had a cuisine. And they tried very hard to compete. And therefore, they started putting many Indian spices in the food to try and make their food spicier, hotter, more appealing to people who liked Sichuan food.
So there you have it. Make sure you follow Taste Buds so you don't miss the next episode when we take you to India's only Chinatown in Kolkata.